Hello everyone and welcome to the Year 10 tutor evening. I really hope your daughters have settled into school really well and that they're enjoying the start of their GCSEs. Tonight's a really great opportunity for you to talk to your daughter's tutor about how she's getting on. But we also wanted to give you some information about what's in store for her over the next couple of years and how we're going to help to support her to be the best that she can be. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the new GCSE examinations to give you all the information you need to be able to help support your daughters. So we say the new GCSE examinations, but in actual fact, the new GCSE exams have been going for about 3 years now, depending on which subject your daughters are doing. But the reason that we still like to share this information with you is because they may be different from when you've had older siblings going through the GCSE system, or indeed they might be different from when you yourselves went through the GCSE examinations. So I'll hopefully provide some useful information to you. So what were the main changes between the old format of GCSEs and the new GCSEs? Well, by far and away the biggest change is that now the exams are linear. And what this means is that there are no longer any modular assessments. So the girls aren't assessed partway through the course. Everything is assessed at the very end of 2 years. So there's no modular exams and very little coursework in the same way as there used to be. Now, this does make the exams harder than they were before. But what we've done in school is worked out how we can help the girls to cope with that. And I'll show you a little bit more of that in a minute. So they are more demanding and the content is also bigger in each of the subjects. The government has asked the exam boards to increase the level of content that is in each of the subjects to help the girls prepare for A-level. And in actual fact, in many cases, some of the A-level content has now been brought down to the GCSEs. So one of our tasks is to help the girls to be able to cope with that. You will know, I'm sure, by now that the grading system was changed from the old style GCSE to the new style GCSE, and so the scores are now 9 to 1, which replace A star to G. There's also very few tiered papers. So previously there were options to do foundation papers if you struggled in a particular subject. Most of our girls do higher papers, so it doesn't affect us too much, but there are options to do foundation papers in maths, sciences and modern foreign languages still. The coursework doesn't exist in the same format anymore. What they've changed it to is something called non-examination assessment, and that's the equivalent of the old style coursework. It's used to assess the essential knowledge and skills that can't be tested within written papers. These are more so in subjects, in practical subjects, so whether that's food or DT. So those are the main changes. Just wanted to share a little bit with you about the grade boundaries as well, so that you can get an idea of the difficulty level of these new style GCSEs. So these are the maths grade boundaries. You can see to get a level 9, you have to have 83%. So that's really very high to be able to score a level 9, which again just shows the difficulty of these subjects. This might help with a little bit of the lingo that we use in our communications with you. So the exam boards that we use in school are Edexcel, AQA and OCR. It's different for different subjects within school. You may also hear us over the next couple of years talking about Ofqual. Ofqual is the regulator of the exam boards, and so they will ensure that Edexcel, AQA and OCR are all in line with each other and are of the same standard. And all of that is overseen by JCQ, the Joint Council for Qualifications. We have to abide by all of the regulations that JCQ put in place for us. So we're well versed in all of the JCQ regulations here at NGHS. Just another example of the content changes becoming harder and the volume of content for each of the subjects. So, for example, in maths, roughly the size of the GCSE is roughly 1/4 bigger than it used to be. So you can imagine if a similar pattern is across all of the subjects, there is an awful lot more content for the girls to learn and a lot more skills needed. In maths, there's a greater focus on problem solving as well. In English, the emphasis has changed to looking at whole texts in detail, and that's that they will practice those whole texts over the course of the year, but there is also an emphasis on unseen texts when they get into the exam as well, so they have to be proficient in skills and be able to assess those unseen texts as well. In science, there's new content, so life cycle analysis, space physics, and more maths is needed for the science courses as well. In history, so my subject, it's again about 25% bigger. So instead of studying 3 topics, we have to do 4. So there's 4 modules altogether. So 3 eras, and British history has to come into that as well. In geography, there's more maths and more statistics, and that's the same for computer science as well. Food has more of a scientific and nutritional emphasis on it. So you can see that when you add all of those subjects together, there's really quite a big difference from the old style GCSE to the new style GCSE. Here's a little bit about the grading system. So you may be more familiar with the old A star to G system. The reason that they've changed it is because quite a high proportion of students were gaining A stars, and they wanted to be able to differentiate between A stars and really divide up how many students were getting A stars. So the grades don't align exactly with the old grading system. But really, in essence, the way to think of it is that an 8 is a little bit like an A star, and a 9 is like an A star star. In terms of the pass rate, what is regarded as a standard pass is a level 4, and level 5 is regarded as a strong pass. Now, despite the fact that these changes were made about 2 or 3 years ago for each of those subjects, we've worked really hard to ensure that we're supporting the girls and making sure they can cope with these changes. And our results have remained as phenomenal as they always are. So you can see from 2019, which is the latest set of exam results that we've had, obviously discounting the centre assessed grades from last year's coronavirus situation. So in 2019, we had 72.7% of grades at 9 to 7. So that's the equivalent of an A star star to A, which is phenomenal. That compares to 20% nationally for all schools, and you can see we're significantly higher than other independent schools across the country as well. So what we're doing to help support the girls is really working. So the new grade 9, just a little bit more about that. The top half of the old A stars have been awarded grade 9s. Just to put those results that I've just told you into context, last year across the country, only 4.5% of entries were awarded at grade 9. At NGHS, we got 27.3% of entries at grade 9. So you can really see that we're bucking the trend of results. It's unusual for students to get straight 9s in all of their subjects. So you can see that only 837 pupils across the country had 7 or more 9s. Now, we had lots of girls in that situation, but that is unusual. So the whole idea of the government is to ensure that fewer and fewer pupils get level 9s. It's not the same as the number of students who used to get A stars in the old system. So really, the equivalent of A's and A stars in the old system will be 7s and 8s, and they're reserving the 9s for that something extra special. So how have we actually managed to get these results so spectacular despite all these difficulties of the new GCSEs? And all of it is down to our focus of teaching and learning on dealing with linearity. So you'll remember I said that previously the exams were modular, and girls are good at modular exams because they work hard all the way through the year, they work for the individual units, and they like to break up their work and do really well in each of those modules, and they like doing coursework. So we knew that the linearity was going to affect girls adversely. So we've done a lot of work on that across the school. And a lot of it has been all to do with memory, because the girls have got to remember skills and contents from the whole 2 years worth of work, and they're tested on that at the very end of the 2 years. So one of the things that we've been working on is helping the girls to transfer their knowledge into their long-term memory store. So a lot of us will use our working memory and our short-term memory, and we'll keep and we'll hold a lot of that information in our short-term memory and in our working memory. And that means that information can quite easily get lost or forgotten, particularly if our attention is drawn in lots of different directions. And for sometimes that means that it can be quite difficult to get the information into the long-term store. Even if you've got the information into your long-term memory and your long-term store, the other challenge is being able to get it out and retrieving that information to be able to then use it in an exam. So we've been basing a lot of our teaching learning on this model. And we've actually been focusing specifically on retrieval. Sorry, the PowerPoint's just jumped, so I'll just have to go back to it. There we go. Okay, so one of the things that we've been working on then is looking at our retrieval strength. So strengthening the ability to be able to get that information back out of our long-term store so that the girls don't forget. So once it's in the long-term memory, it's there, and it's very unusual to forget what's in your long-term memory. The problem is accessing it again and getting it back. So this is just to help demonstrate that. Often, if you learn something once, then there is a forgetting curve. So you learn something, but then gradually over time, what you have learnt, you forget. So hopefully, if I was to ask you what I covered in this presentation in the next 5 minutes, I would hope that you'd remember quite a lot of it. But if I asked you again in 15 hours' time, you'll have forgotten 70% of it. So how do we combat that? Because obviously the girls have got to be learning all of this content and they've got to remember it again in 2 years' time. So it's all about rehearsal. Rehearsal gets the information from the short-term memory into the long-term memory so that more than 30% is retained in future. So rehearsal is often about practicing things. And the best way of practicing things is about spacing that practice over time and coming back to it to be able to get it into the long-term memory. So we do a lot of this work with the girls. The girls should be familiar with these concepts, and they will be familiar with these concepts over the course of Year 10 and Year 11. And this is what really helps them to get the information into their long-term memory and retrieve that information. So really, this is what we've been doing. Instead of the girls learning it once and then gradually forgetting it, and that's the red line there, then what happens is we encourage the girls to do spaced learning, where they're chunking up their work and they're going back and reviewing it at various different points. So every time you review it, you can see there on the learning curve is boosted so that the forgetting curve is eradicated. And eventually that means that if you've reviewed things 5 times and you've practiced things and you've rehearsed things 5 times, that should mean that it's gone into your long-term memory, which means that the girls have got a better chance of remembering it for their GCSEs. So we do an awful lot of this work with the girls, and I wanted to give you a summary of that so that you could see how we were working with the girls over the course of their 2 years to help them achieve those phenomenal results that we've always achieved in the past. I hope that overview of the GCSEs and the new GCSE system is useful for you and gives you a flavour of what your daughters are studying at the moment. If you do have any questions, then I know in the letter that's been sent out, you're able to book appointments with any of the pastoral team. So please do feel free to email in, and then we can set up a Google Meet or a virtual session where we can answer those questions for you. But otherwise, I hope that's useful and enjoy your sessions with the tutors. Take care then.